So I think we could start the meeting. Jim, Susan said she wasn't going to be here, so I think you're going to need a chair tonight.
Okay, that's news to me. So, okay. I didn't know that. I will try to put on my chairperson hat then. Let's see. Rich, you're going to be taking the notes and minutes and whatnot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know we're going to have a roll call. Let's go ahead with a roll call then.
Okay. Bachhuber?
Yes, I'm here.
Ebert?
Here.
Potter?
Here.
Knorr?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
West? Sullivan?
Here.
Here's we have a quorum.
Okay. Do we have Rich, we have a new city engineering staff person you want to introduce just before we get to the minutes here?
Sure, we can do that. Eric Sorensen joined us recently from MSA previously, so he's pretty familiar with most of the faces on both the SWAB and the WRMC, so we're grateful for that. I think he's going to be a great attribute to our already great team, and I'll let him add any introductions he wishes to.
Well, I think I know almost all of you. Hello, it's good to be at the city now. I think you're pretty familiar with me and done a lot of stuff, you know, in front of both committees. So I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Well, welcome, Eric. We're glad to have you on board and looking forward to working with you also.
Thank you.
And someday we'll be in the same room together, I'm thinking. Any comments on the minutes? If not, does anyone want to move to approve?
I'll move for approval. This is Gebert.
Cook will second.
That was Jim seconding?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, we got a motion to approve and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed? All right. All right. First order of business then is this land dedication along Pheasant Branch Creek between Deming and Highway 12. We talked about this at past meetings about this property that was still in private hands, and apparently the negotiations have occurred to help secure that land for city's access and ability to maintain and do some restoration work along that part of the creek. Is there any presentation on this, Rich?
No, we didn't have necessarily a presentation. I did include the CSM in the packet, I believe.
Okay, yep, you did. Any questions on this?
I would offer, I'm sorry, I would offer just an update. We heard sort of late this afternoon that there may be a revision to the CSM just to split the one outlot into two outlots so that it's very clear to the owners and their banks which land it is specifically that they're deeding to the city.
Okay. I assume the city is satisfied with the boundaries that have been drawn for this easement, and they're satisfied it'll serve their need for access and construction and restoration work?
We've left that more to Mark Wagner over in Parks and Rec to make sure that the paths along there are still satisfied, and I think he is satisfied with that. Okay. But beyond the ownership of these lands as outlot, there really isn't much changing. So,
right. Any other discussion on that item, that topic? We need a motion to recommend to council to accept these lands as an asset of the stormwater utility. Somebody make that motion.
I'll make that motion. This is Warren.
I'll second Ken.
And
who seconded? I'm sorry.
Moved by Warren and seconded by Ken Potter.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? And all in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Next order is the Pheasant Branch Stream Bank work from Confluence Pond to Century Avenue for plan approval. Aaron, let's see, or Anna, are you going to be talking for Aaron, or do you have anything to add on this?
I think Aaron's here. We had briefly, I think we just briefly discussed whether I was going to go first or Aaron was going to go first for the two items. Aaron, did you have a comment there?
No, we can do it either way. I guess just for succinctity, we were thinking maybe Anna could go first with the landfill discussion, and then I would go through both of the stream projects, but I guess that's up to the chair.
Okay, let's see. So the landfill is item number 5, I believe. Is that right? Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so is there any concern with tackling item number 5 first? This is the issue of the amendment for Cardinal to do this additional permitting work because we're going to be disturbing the landfill during the stream restoration in this area. And Aaron can describe in more detail, but we have covered this in past meetings also about the discovery of this fill material requiring permitting from DNR to excavate any of that area. Aaron, do you want to give a real brief summary of, you're asking for an amendment, which we've discussed in the past, so it's not a surprise to anybody here.
Nope. So I think what we have kind of up on the screen now is I'll let Anna kind of discuss what our original findings were that we presented to the DNR. And then through our conversation with the DNR, some additional work that they've requested in order to basically say that this site is not going to pose a problem to any kind of excavation that we need to do on the toe of the bank and bank grading for the stream bank work, and an exemption to work in the landfill area.
Yeah,
So,
and
Anna,
I had a couple of visual slides here, but I think my presentation is disabled, so I don't know if you guys want to see those or not. It's not a huge deal either way.
Am I sharing my screen with the?
Richard, you are.
Okay, I can advance these if you want, Anna.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you have these from, okay, yeah, I see it. Okay, yeah, go ahead and next slide, please.
Oh, yeah, get crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and I think some of you have seen this before, but maybe some of you aren't as familiar. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me at any moment. But here's a 1957 aerial photograph of the area along Pheasant Branch. You can see Parmenter on the west there. And in the southeast corner, that's currently where the Middleton High School football stadium is, way in the far southeast corner of that, in that ag field there. But yeah, you can see the old gravel pit there. The north part appears to have been filled in at that point, and it looks like the southern portion there is in process of being used as a municipal waste unit.
So that originally was a gravel source of gravel for.
It looks like it. It was mapped that way on the old soil maps, and I don't think we have any other documentation to that effect, but it appears that way from the soil map. It is mapped as a gravel pit.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Anytime we have a hole, it's a great place to throw trash. So
yeah, right. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can go forward to the next slide here. And just a couple little visuals here as we walk around the woods that are surrounding that far northwest practice field way back behind the football stadium. You can see in that top left photo, there's an old a 55-gallon drum, yep, right there, that has a nice tree growing on top of it. So that's been there a while. And you can see various glass containers of, you can tell that are not current, but you know, decades old. And there's also a well feature that we think is probably was associated with the landfill activities. But again, we don't have any documentation of that. So we can go next slide. And just a couple of points on our discussions with the DNR. We've had a lot of contact with Stephen Martin over at the South Central region. He's the team supervisor there and is our contact for this project. Since this is not a licensed landfill, it was an old historic fill site before those regulations were in place, the remediation and redevelopment program has to handle this exemption. So he's our contact there. And we did talk to him in early March and gave him sort of the rundown of the background that we knew so far, what we'd figured out from our desktop review. This was prior to us being able to get out to the site because there was still a lot of snow cover over the winter, of course. But he was very receptive and glad to be looped in early. You know, DNR is always excited to be able to support projects that are environmentally minded. So it's not like somebody's trying to build an apartment complex and, oh, give us the permit, give us the permit. So yeah, they're very excited to support an environmental project. And they are, as he said, he's not inclined to make it a bigger deal than it has to be. But of course, that's up to the DNR to decide how big a deal it does need to be. And in our initial conversations with him, we had proposed doing a couple of test pits and basing a characterization of the situation on physical observations and field observations. And if we didn't see anything scary that would indicate toxic or hazardous substances in the subsurface, then maybe that would be that. But Stephen kind of pushed back on that and said, no, I do want to see soil samples. I do want to see waste analytical as well as groundwater analytical, and also a couple of samples from Pheasant Branch to look at the surface water analytical. And I have sent him the 2018 data that was already collected to see whether maybe that would satisfy him, and I haven't heard back yet. But in any case, those two samples are pretty quick to get and not very expensive to run. So,
question for you then:
yes,
the sampling we're talking about, you're going to have to install some monitoring wells. Is that
yes, but we'll just install temporary monitoring wells. So
okay.
It's basically we'll drive a 3-inch diameter hole into the soil, drop a 1-inch PVC down there, and come back the next day, sample the water, and take it out. So won't be a permanent installation. So won't be getting in anybody's way.
How many of those wells?
We are planning to do 4 now. After discussing with Stephen, we were hoping to do a few less, but he added 1 more. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we go. Here's a nice map with all kinds of layers on it. We'll go through this piece by piece here. You can see these sort of lime green polygons along the stream where it says proposed grading. Those are the areas of Aaron's design where the stream banks need to be regraded and restabilized. So that was the impetus of this whole project. You can see the red X's on this map. We also did, when we did the geophysical survey, we also did a quick methane survey. Methane can be generated by municipal waste and then can sometimes accumulate and cause explosion hazards. So that's something that DNR is always going to be concerned with from a health and safety standpoint. So we did a quick methane survey and sampled soil gas from approximately 2 feet below the surface at all of these X marks. And luckily, we did not get a single sniff of methane. So that's good news. It's either not generating a lot of methane or it's not seeping up through the cap. And either way, that's good news. So we don't have to worry too much about health and safety from that aspect. And then you can see we used a ground penetrating radar and identified our subsurface utilities so that we know where to avoid the electrical lines. There's an irrigation line there along the practice field and some storm lines there. So we have a good handle on where those are, and we'll be sure not to do any intrusive work within many feet of those. And then the colored layer underneath, the sort of rainbow stuff that you see on the bottom layer there, is electromagnetic induction survey results. And the red areas indicate more compacted soils, or it also can indicate metal infrastructure or interference from the buildings. You can kind of see that along the fence line and near the sheds. And then the more blue areas indicate looser or potentially filled areas. So you can see a nice line sort of right down the middle of the practice field where we think that that blue area is likely the main body of the waste and the former footprint of the gravel pit. So that gives us a really good starting point to figure out, okay, let's find the edges of this thing.
So question, you're not right now just for the stream bank restoration work, there's no proposed excavation within those shaded areas. Is that
right?
What we're seeing? Okay.
Right, and that was what we were exploring when we were first figuring out this project, because as you can see there, the stream bank restoration is right along, of course, right along the stream bank, and doesn't get into what is hopefully the main body of the waste, although we did see waste in that cut stream bank. So we were hoping when we went to Stephen at DNR to say, let's do a couple of test pits in the area where we're going to work and see what's there. And we were hoping he'd go for that, but the exemption process really requires you to define the extent, so the lateral extent and the depth of the entire landfill that you're dealing with. So they really like to take these opportunities to get their arms around a definition of what's the whole thing that's here. Since we're going to disturb it, let's know what the whole thing looks like. So that's why this investigation has continued on to the southeast here, when we're really not going to disturb any of that area, but DNR wants to know what's there, how much is there. If that kind of answers your
Thank you
question. Yeah. And so this final map here, you can see we've added a couple of, there's 5 different gray arrows on here. These are areas where we intend to do some test pits, basically excavate a trench and take a good look at what's there. And we'll take our soil and waste samples from those trenches. The orange dots are locations where we will be doing direct push borings. That is just taking about a 3-inch diameter hollow tube and pressing it directly into the ground. So it has a very low impact on the practice field and will be super easy to restore to good working order. And then the blue ones there, this is an old drawing. The orange dot closest to where it says proposed grading, Stephen requested that we do a temporary monitoring well there. So we'll add one there. And then the 2 up closer to the infrastructure, only one of those will be a well. We were sort of hedging our bets to see, what location will work better. But 3 along the stream and 1 up gradient to make sure that there's no groundwater issues that are coming from the other direction. And these locations will likely change in the field as we kind of feel our way around the edges of the landfill to see, okay, this is native soil. No, this is still in the in the fill area. So we can kind of go back and forth and find the edges, figure out what the depth is so that we can take that back to DNR and say, this is the volume of waste and this is what the waste is like.
Anna? What's the elevation gain, please, from the stream to the practice field?
It's between 20-30 feet. It's pretty significant.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how deep that gravel pit was and how much waste they managed to fit in there.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think that's our plan, and we've run that by Stephen at DNR to make sure he was okay with the details, and he gave us a little bit of feedback, but he's very happy that we're looping him in and keeping him updated. So hopefully he'll continue to be happy, and there will be no surprises.
So what possible, excuse me, this is Warren.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So what possible decisions could DNR make? They could say that we have to remediate that site before we do anything on the stream bank?
So the most likely scenario, based on what we know from our desktop review and from what we've observed in the field so far, is that this was a municipal landfill. It's probably a lot of glass bottles, some broken bikes, and some tires, nothing scary. And if that's what we find when we do our analytical sampling and our subsurface investigation, then DNR is going to be happy with that and say, okay, put a nice cap back on it, and that's the end of the problem. If we do find indications of toxic materials or hazardous materials that have impacted groundwater, there is a potential for DNR to come back and say, no, this site needs to be taken care of. There's some risk to human health or the environment, and that needs to be addressed.
It has to be addressed before we do stream bank.
Yeah, it'll depend entirely on exactly what we find. There could be a scenario where there is something that maybe needs to be addressed, but that doesn't stop us from doing the construction on the stream bank. Well, it'll just be super case by case, and a discussion with Stephen on exactly what we find and how we can move forward.
If it's too big a problem, then we wouldn't do stream bank restoration in that area.
Yeah, potentially.
Well, let me ask the question, Anna. If you find concerning material,
mm-hmm.
you can't just close it up and walk away, can you? Regardless of the stream bank project.
It depends on what we find and how much. What are the levels?
Yeah,
because whether it's exceeding Wisconsin standard levels in soil and groundwater. So
right.
Yeah, it's if there are exceedances, then likely, since DNR is now aware of that, they will probably not want to drop it.
Right. And
so that
main concern for you would be, or potential could be petroleum product and solvents and paints and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's going to be unlikely based on the rural nature of the area at the time that this fill site was in use, and all indications that we have is that it was municipal type stuff. So we're not expecting, we're not right next door to the Acme factory where, they had 300 drums they needed to get rid of.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that that's not the case, that all indications so far would lead us to expect non-scary municipal waste. So fingers crossed that that's what we find.
Any other questions?
Well, Jim, I was going to ask you, are you, am I hearing that if something is found, DNR suggests that if we're going to do stream bank stuff, we have to get that remediated. So the discussion then we'd say, well, we aren't going to do stream bank in that area. We're going to modify, pardon me, our plans. They have then discovered that there's a problem in that particular area. And who would be responsible then, since the discovery's been made? Who cleans it up?
Yeah, well, that'll be a question for the lawyers.
Yeah,
I'd say Middleton would clean it up.
It's most likely the city. I mean, it's on, I guess that's officially a school property. Is that the case?
Yeah, I believe it's owned by the city, and but also potentially responsible parties would be maybe the gravel pit owner. If it's difficult in this case because we're going pretty far back in history, and we don't have existing entities to go back to. But
so we're kind of taking a little bit of a chance, I guess.
Well,
And I guess I'll just step in for a second here. And the reason this whole thing started was because during the flood of 2018, we had a whole bunch of debris wash out of that side slope when that's so eroded, making us aware that all the fill materials that were in there. And in order to do any kind of stabilization, even of the toe of that slope, technically, with knowing that materials are coming out of there, we would need this exemption that we're trying to pursue from the DNR to do any kind of stonework or any kind of grading on those banks. So right now we're moving forward under the assumption that we won't find anything too nasty and that we would be putting on a cap on the areas where we're putting in stone toe protection of the toe of the slope and then grading the bank.
And I'll just say, if in fact the worst came to worst and you found something hazardous and nasty down there, well, we have some obligation, you know, to remove that hazard, in my opinion. I'm not the money deciding guy, but you know, there is some obligation to clean up the environment, no matter how old it is.
Yeah, and certainly the current property owner is one of the potentially responsible parties that would be immediately in line for that, sure. And you know, there may be arguments to be made if other potentially responsible parties could be found, but
that's the lawyer's time.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the proposal and the amendment? Amendment is for $47,000. That covers all, I assume, lab costs, investigations, you know, up to what you identify here. Assuming that the situation
this would be all inclusive, assuming we don't find anything scary and DNR is happy with it. Yeah.
Right. So I'll entertain a motion to. I guess I better ask Rich. Is this available in our utility budget?
I'm not certain that it is. It's certainly not budgeted for, but I imagine the funds are there, and I think they need to be.
Yeah.
Whether we have to make a contingency transfer or some other means of doing it. Sean might have a better idea about that. They don't monitor the budget those at all yet.
Well,
yeah, and I don't know enough about this particular line item, but the stormwater utility itself, I believe, has the resources for this.
All right. So I'd entertain a motion that, contingent upon funding being secured, we would recommend approval of the amendment. I need a motion to that effect.
This is Don. I'll go ahead and move that. This goes to Finance and Council, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't have said that so quickly. Mark, am I correct on that?
You are. I would just ask that you don't make it contingent. There's sufficient funds, or there will be, we'll defer something less of a priority to get this done.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment if Don will accept
that.
No
problem. I'm good with that.
We have a second?
I'll second. Potter.
Ken seconded. All in favor of the motion to approve the contract amendment request from Cardinal? Say aye.
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 Aye. And opposed? Okay, motion passed. That's number 5. Are we backing up to number 4 then?
I think Aaron was going to do 4 and 6 together.
Yep, I think that's the case.
So staff recommends the board approve the plans for bidding contingent upon resolution of the remaining staff comments. Okay, but we did not vote on the plan itself then, is that right? Or are we talking about the investigation plan? I'm a little confused here. And Aaron, you may straighten me out, please.
So I think we are looking for right now, it would be item number 4, and that would be review and approval of the final design plans for the main stem of Century from the confluence pond, or Pheasant Branch from the confluence pond to Century Avenue. And I think the plans are included in the agenda packet.
Yep.
They were updated with design recommendations and comments from staff. You know, basically, I guess to just give an overview, you know, as we have discussed in prior meetings, our design is a reliance on stream bank grading to add additional flood flow capacity, restore eroded banks from the flood in 2018 to more stable angles, remove invasive species from some of the grading areas that will allow for additional flood flow capacity, add additional habitat while we're protecting the toe of the slope, and protect infrastructure located within the corridor.
And we've had adequate review by the trails and bridge folks. They're all on board with this.
I don't think that's gone to the committee yet. I think that's going either later this week or next. I'm not certain.
Yeah, so I mean, let's go back to where the council has set the priorities. And the first is to restore the stream bank. The second is to replace or improve the trail and bridges. So I think the priority here is that what we're trying to get approved here is a design to get the stream bank to where it works most optimally.
Okay.
Right. And the idea would be to restore the stream bank first, then have the trail reconstruction come in behind the stream bank restoration.
Right.
Correct.
Right. I was aware of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So
the real issue then is what are if staff has not finished reviewing this, what are the staff comments that need to get resolved? Or is it just potential comments?
Well,
I'll jump in here and say that I've offered some review comments, and I believe Aaron has addressed them. It's that I haven't had a chance to re-review the newest set of drawings to verify that the staff comments are all addressed. I believe that they are.
And this set that was included in the agenda was our response to Sean's comments that he made on our 90% designs. So okay. I think, you know, the idea is that if this design would be approved, just to give you kind of an idea of the schedule that we're looking at right now, we're hoping to have bids go out by the end of the month, have it advertised during the first and second week of May, and then have the bids opened on June 9th, which would then be conditionally awarded or would come back to this committee on June 16th with a recommendation to award a bidder. If that went through, that would then go to council for approval, and we'd be looking to start construction in the first or second week of July. We figure right now, you know, weather depending, that we could put together construction of this project in about 10 to 12 weeks, which would have us finishing up around the end of September and then being able to move right into the next project north of Century at that time, which is only about a 4 to 5 week project, and have both stream projects from basically the confluence pond through the area north of Century Avenue finished by the end of October.
I think one thing of note with that schedule is not having a determination from FEMA for funding.
Yeah. So that's our biggest question right now is we've been working closely with FEMA with our designs and our design plans and trying to get everything in order with their processes, for lack of a better term. They are aware of all this. They have, I think, at least for now, all the information they need. And they're going through their internal reviews as well with the plans that we have in front of you right now.
So just to be clear, FEMA is a reimbursement. It's not an advanced funding. So we would have, the city would have to front all of the expense on this and then be reimbursed. And that's one of the reasons why the stormwater utility had raised its fees after the flood, was for, you know, to be able to fund these projects.
Right. I think some of this is coming, Mark, from me, is we've launched other projects, and long after the fact, FEMA has come in with a handful of questions saying, well, did you do this? Did you do this? It was not a known part of the process. And they're talking in terms of it jeopardizing reimbursement. So even though it's a reimbursement program, if we don't dot the I's and cross the T's as they set them out, we could jeopardize part of our reimbursement. And I'm really gun shy about doing that, having gone through some of these other projects with them, where they're still asking me questions about Baskerville Harbor, and that's been done for some time. And we barely touched anything over there. Yeah. So it makes me a little gun shy. If the council wants to move forward without some sort of assurance that FEMA is satisfied that we've checked all of their boxes, I'm absolutely fine to go, but I threw that in there.
Yeah, FEMA's never going to guarantee this at this point in time, are they? They're not going to show their hand until...
No, well, they won't.
No.
So. I will say that our program manager, our newest program manager, has been really, really good. He's proactive. He is hustling, trying to make sure that other internal and external agencies are getting their questions dealt with. And on our end, I would say the same of Aaron. He's been very responsive in trying to provide that information to FEMA. So the communication lines are great. It just feels like, I don't know, it's a very difficult process, even for them.
Yeah. Okay, so Sean, if I heard you correctly, the staff comments that remain on this plan are relatively minor or have already been addressed. I'm hearing you don't have a concern with us approving these plans as presented. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. It was relatively substantive comments on my first round with just 2 or 3 sort of substantive things. And I believe they've all been addressed. I just haven't been able personally to verify that.
I'm comfortable enough to ask for approval then of these plans. Do these plans have to go to the council also for approval?
No,
they do not.
Okay. So we are approving for, basically we're approving this for a bid package to go out, for an advertisement to go out, correct, Aaron?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make that motion. This is Warren.
For both? For both items 4 and 6, is that correct?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Thomas Sullivan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions on either of those 2 items then? 6 is a part north of Century Avenue, and that's, again, that's just,
just add the idea there was to potentially get a cost savings to the city,
right.
bidding both projects at once, in case a contractor wanted to bid on both and save on mobilization costs and things like that.
So you'll advertise both these together, is that correct? We will.
At the same time, not in the same bid, but at the same time.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on these? All right. All in favor of approval of these plans as presented for north of Pheasant Branch, north of Century Avenue, and the main stem from Main Pond to Century Avenue? Say aye.
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 And opposed? That's adopted. Okay. I believe that is our agenda. Is that correct,
Well done.
Richard?
Well done, Jim. You got done in 45 minutes.
Warren, I'm bucking for your job, Warren. I'm telling you, I'm coming after you.
You got it. You just said it. Be ready to go. Be ready to go at 7.
I have one question in the bidding process. Is there an option that allows a contractor, a single contractor, to give us a deduct for awarding both contracts to them?
I'm assuming that option will be in there as a alternative or some such thing. And I'll ask Aaron and Rich if I'm on track here, or Sean, or Eric, any one of you guys.
I don't know how you would write that, how you would be able to write that in there. I think though that a winning bidder, if they knew they were going to be on site for one, might reduce their mobilization such on the second one that it could be bid together.
Right. I would assume that they would incorporate that in their proposed costs. So they're making the most attractive bid possible, knowing that they're going to have that cost savings when they put their bid in.
Are you saying they could not show a bid where they would say, you know, if both products are awarded, here's my bid. If only one gets awarded, here's the bid for this one, and here's a bid for that one?
I think the scope of work is so largely different in volumes that you wouldn't necessarily do it that way to put the, I suppose you could bid it whether without an alternate or some kind of phrase like discounted if I can get both jobs type of scenario, or deduct for being contract awarded both jobs. I guess I haven't dealt with that, so I don't know how to best phrase that.
I'm going to look at Eric Sorensen now that you're on board. Can you think of some language like that? I think I've seen some stuff, you know, like that.
Yeah, it's possible. I guess is the reason we're doing it in 2 bids is because we're worried we won't have the funding for this part that's north of Century.
I think it just came down as 2 products.
Go ahead, Richard, sorry.
I think it came down as 2 projects, and so we're just keeping them separated. But I don't know that there's a real great reason to if they're both ready. I mean, that may change a bunch of the bid documents to a single document, but I don't know that they're prepared anyway yet.
It would, and that's one of the things we should then first check with FEMA on too, because I know their preference is to break things into as small a pieces as they can so that disadvantaged business enterprises can be eligible to bid on these things. So they very much prefer not aggregating things. That said, I would agree a bidder could discount some line items and get both bids. We'd have to check with our city attorney too as to whether a bidder can submit a bid that's contingent or conditional upon a different bid. You know, that sort of scenario wouldn't have to be contiguous. You know, there could be 2 bids across the city from each other to say, well, if I don't get both of them, you're paying a different price. And
I think, Sean, if we were to space them out a little bit, one might know that they were the low bid and be able to adjust their pricing accordingly.
Yeah, we could do that. Put them a week apart.
Yeah. And I think that would keep us on a tail.
Jim, Mark Wagner, when we bid out the design and engineering work for the bridges and path, and then for the stream bank. MSA put in for both of those. And in their proposals, when they submitted, they said themselves that if they were to get both of them, that there would be a cost savings and that they would reduce their overall submitted bids. So it might not even necessarily be upon the city to do that. The individual submitters might do that on their own as well. It's a risk that we're assuming that they would do it, but it did happen that way for the design and engineering work.
Yeah, that's a professional service contract. That's very different than bidding law.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good point.
I was going to add that. Jim, I see Susan has her hand up. I don't know.
Yeah, I do too. And I just want to be clear before Susan, I'll recognize you. Are we no longer in a formal meeting? Is that everybody's understanding?
No, we have not adjourned yet.
All right. Well, we're off agenda maybe, but go, Susan, you got something to add here?
Yeah, I just joined. I'm in North Carolina. So I only heard that last little bit in terms of bidding it all as one project. Just be sure that the north part gets done after the Main Creek corridor is done.
Yeah.
There needs to be a sequence in when they're done.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to work downstream, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to adjourn the meeting then. If we could keep discussing off the record, I guess, but I'd like to get the meeting adjourned. Do we need a motion for that?
Moved.
Ken moved. And need a second.
I'll second it.
That was Warren. All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Rich, we need to re-log in again for the water resource meeting. Is that right?
That is true. Unfortunately, I didn't take Sean's probably great advice and make it one meeting to zoom into, but I apologize for that. And we
won't hold that against you. It's all right. So.
Well, I'm gone, so good night, everybody.
All right, you got 10 minutes for a bathroom break or hop off here, and we'll get on again in about 13 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, I'll launch it right away so you can jump in as you see fit.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.